Hello, everyone. Welcome to Snap Take. I'm Glazer of the Snap Judgments podcast, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. And we've got so many things to talk about with you today. This weekend was the first tournament since the nerfs to High Evolutionary, and we've got the rise of a deck. The rise of a deck in popularity, but not necessarily performance. Where bounces and where evolutionary are. We've got a great idea of all of those things after this Snap Battle Arena tournament. But before we start going over the stats from that tournament, we talk about two very specific decks from that tournament that I think you need to know about. I'd like you to hit that subscribe button. And if you're already subbed, hit me with a like and comment. That really, really helps out the YouTube algorithm, and we'd really appreciate the support. Fundamentally, we're trying to grow, we're trying to become a bigger channel, we're trying to be able to help more people. And in the process, your subscription, your like, your comment helps that. What we offer you in exchange is we give you all the information once or twice a day, supposedly only on weekdays, but this is releasing on a Sunday. We bring you all the information that you could possibly need to hit infinite in Snap, to reach infinity on Conquest, to compete in tournaments, whatever your Marvel Snap goals are, we help you get there. In addition to that, we also do the biggest giveaway in all of Marvel Snap. That'll be starting again around the end of this week because this season is starting to wind up. We do the single biggest giveaway. Actually, I guess it'll be starting after I get back from vacation, whatever. We do the biggest giveaway every single season. We give away more season passes. We give away more stuff than absolutely anyone else. So please hit us with that subscription. We'd really appreciate it. It really helps us out. All right, cool. Now let's talk about the tournament. Snap Battle Arena, and I'll link them in the description, is a Discord that our friend Alphos runs, and he runs twice monthly giant Marvel Snap tournaments. We're talking 130 plus people every single tournament, and these do a remarkable job of shaping and predicting the meta because a lot of tournament grinders, top level players play in this. We've got our Brow Days. Very often Moyen participates, very often Lambie either participates or comments or both, etc., etc. These are big tournaments. So what we're going to look at today, and Torrican, another phenomenal tournament player, puts together all the stats for us. Torrican has put together the frequency, appearance rate, and win rate of decks in this nice, helpful tab. Oh, great. So the most seen deck overall was Surfer. I knew Surfer was going to rise because Surfer is a very, very solid answer for bounce. That said, it only had one top 8 appearance and a middling win percentage. For the amount of people who played it, it's a good win percentage, but a middling win percentage. That one top 8 appearance is our friend Cool KG. We'll talk about his deck tomorrow in Snap Take, so make sure you keep your eyes open for that. He's got a really, really cool take that sort of combines Quinny Equinox, another phenomenal player, and our own Den's version of the deck. It takes basically a core concept from each, smashes them together, and was very successful. The other big thing to know is Thanos Control is back. I've been telling you this for the last 2 weeks, those of you who are not new here. 2 straight weeks of me sharing Thanos deck after Thanos deck. I hit Infinite with Thanos. I'm telling you, this deck is legit for both Conquest and Ladder. It's a real deck. It is top of the line. You'll see the win rate is a little lower than the very best decks, except if you combine it with Thanos Ongoing right down here. Thanos Ongoing is fairly similar. So this is a top win rate deck, a top appearance rate deck. Thanos is back. The tournament was won by Thanos. We're going to get to that relatively soon. Destroy didn't perform especially well. I didn't expect Destroy to perform exceptionally well, but you'll notice that Kitty Pride got played slightly less than it has been. A lot of that is because Shuri Kitty ate up a lot of the meta share. That's the other major deck we're going to talk about. You'll note that those are the 2 highest win rates outside of basically Thanos that we're talking about today. Kitty did phenomenally well. It just didn't happen to finish at the very top. There's just enough predators that on the tournament scene, it is prevented from reaching the top of the mountain. We're going to talk a lot about that Shuri Kitty deck that Cam Best put out. We're going to talk about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and we'll go from there. The other major thing to note is you see a whole 3 high Evo Lockjaw. Didn't perform well, but with 3, we're not drawing any conclusions. And the other high evolutionary decks were played once each or not at all. That is to say, high evolutionary with these mild nerfs is fundamentally gone from the tournament meta. That's hugely important, right? If High Evolutionary isn't here, that further increases the power of bounce, the range of bounce, unless people are playing pure bounce answers. And some were with Surfer. But even that, with being the most popular deck, wasn't enough to counteract the insane win percentage of Kitty. It's also worth noting that if it didn't finish at the top and it was played so much, a lot of the best decks in this tournament, the top 8 decks, were built in ways that could counter Kitty, particularly Thanos. The most successful deck in the tournament, in addition to be the winning one, was variations on Thanos. At some point, we're just going to do a Thanos day where I look at all of these. We're only looking at the winning one today. But what's happening right now is Thanos is extremely, extremely well placed to answer basically everything else the decks in the meta are doing. And it kind of always has been. We just have to take our time to find the right builds. Because Thanos is a toolbox that you can put whatever tools you want to into. In this case, we're seeing a lot of lane control with Thanos as the most successful versions because those are the most successful versions against Bounce. Bounce needs ways and places to play cards, and those are basically eliminated, fundamentally crushed by Thanos lane control style decks. Nowhere to play, no way to win. Let's talk about decks now. Let's talk specific decks. We're going to start with the KM Shuri deck. This is the version that Browday played. It is a take on the deck KM Best, friend of the show, released last week. I'm just going to tell you straight up, KM Best thinks that this is now a meta deck because of the nerf to High Evolutionary, basically pushing Lockjaw out of the meta. He thinks that this can go big enough, not big enough to compete with High Evolutionary Lockjaw as it was, but big enough to compete with where the meta is now. Longtime viewers will recognize this deck. We are 3 cards different from a version that we released right after the Red Skull buff. This is exactly where my mind went after that buff. And the very next day, we were talking about this deck. So again, hit us with that sub. We will keep you ahead of the curve. Cambest is a brilliant deck builder, a brilliant player. We got there weeks sooner. Just saying, pay attention. We'll get you there. All right. This deck is really strong. It fundamentally is built around playing a lot of cards early, gaining power. Kitty and Angela is right now the best card engine, the best power engine in the game. It's got armor to help protect that. It's got Luke Cage in case Evolutionary shows up. Honestly, I think Luke Cage is the easiest cut. It should have been easy to read that Evolutionary wasn't going to be in the meta. Nebula is really good into lane control. Jeff is really good into lane control. And then ideally on turn 5, you can turn 4 Shuri, Red Skull, and then play Taskmaster, right? Like that play is always available to you. That's 28 power. 30 power, I guess, because Shuri is there, right? 30 power in one lane, at least 28 power on another. It's really hard to compete with. We know that. The other play line here is if you've got Kitty going on turn 1, you can turn 5, play Shuri into Kitty. And then turn 6, play Kitty into Taskmaster. It's like a play on the old She-Hulk Taskmaster idea without having to skip a turn. It's a great way to get a lot of power on the board where your opponent can't really tell. And you can see that like a lot of versions of this deck, well, I guess 2 finished in the 5-0 bracket, a couple other finished in the 4-1. This was one of the more taken decks. It's really good, but I think it falls apart from being top of the line because it's really easy to control. Cards like Jean Grey and cards in decks like Silver Surfer often cause this a lot of trouble. If you don't get exactly the right things down, your Kitty ends up fundamentally unprotected. You end up with losing a Goose or a Stormed lane. You end up losing a Professor X lane or a Spider-Man lane that's just locked off from you. And these things basically lose you the game. Also really, really bad for this deck is the often in Surfer found Shadow King. The Cosmos that are coming back in the meta that we'll talk about soon basically ruin the Shuri and Taskmaster's life. There's a lot that can really go wrong for this deck. It is really strong, especially if you're looking on ladder and in early rounds of Conquest. Would I bring it to a tournament? I don't think so. I think this is a tier 2 deck right now, not a tier 1 deck, despite the sheer pedigree. What am I took this? The sheer pedigree of the players that brought this or versions of this deck. I still think this is a tier 2 deck, even though it performed really well. I think it just falls short of the very, very best. Now, if proper bounce is nerfed, I can see this rising up. If the nerf is something like Beast and not Kitty Pryde, I can see that than this being better. As is, my Iron Man just kind of beats this unless you can pick it, right? Like, Beast and Angela and so on. Sorry, Bishop and Angela and Kitty get so big that I don't usually have trouble with this. I never really cut Shang-Chi from my version. I cut Shang-Chi from the version that's like going super tall, but like my version of the Lambie still runs Shang-Chi over Jeff, and that gives this a lot of trouble. So like this deck is really good, right? But it is not like, it's just got weaknesses. It's got holes in its game, despite the fact that it's got all this tech. I think it tries to tech for too much, and the ways it gets big are counterable. This is, however, a deck to be aware of. You are going to be seeing variations on this deck. I'm going to go out on a not very big limb and assume that the next cut is Luke Cage from this deck. I think he won't be there next time we see this. And again, your high evolutionary lockdown style decks are still good. I know that they're nerfed and that means people don't want to play them, but they're not significantly worse. All right, let's talk about our winner. Our winner is W, formerly WWLOS. Our guest on this week's Snap Judgments podcast, one or two, going to leave the others a surprise for now. But one of our two guests on this week's Snap Judgments podcast is W. This is a very cool take on the Thanos control shell. Fundamentally, what it does is it tries to ramp out one of its 5-cost cards. It's using Psylocke and the Time Stone to do so. It ramps out a 5-cost card using these, and ideally the perfect play for that is Professor X. You're also perfectly fine with Blue Marvel or Devil Dinosaur. You very often want to save Clawdle later. If you don't get that ramp, your job is on turn 4 to hopefully, if you're drawing properly, if you're not getting unlucky, to play Iron Lad. Iron Lad should lead you into some more draw. If Iron Lad leads you into more draw or a powerful card or Spider-Man or Professor X, you are set, because if it's Spider-Man, then you Spider-Man the next turn. That lane is locked. Now you just have to figure out a way to take one more. If it's Professor X, then you have a Professor X next turn, and you can win that way. If you're not winning the Professor X lane right away, you've got Claw and Jeff for that. You've got Cosmo to stop all the ongoing stuff that's going on in the meta. Remember that last deck? Cosmo is so frustrating for that deck. Cosmo is so frustrating for all the Surfer decks everywhere. We've got Luke Cage because, again, apparently people still expected more high evolutionary than I would have. Blue Marvel is here because Killmonger isn't. It gives the stones more value. Shang-Chi is your way to get rid of big things, and everything else is relatively self-explanatory. I will note that someone left a comment on last week's video going, Iron Lad, and when I play this, keeps hitting America. It's really frustrating because the stones shuffle America into the deck, so it's easy for her to sit on top. Los, in his winning version, straight up cuts America, so maybe that's better. I've played the deck 70 times, and I've only hit America a few times. But if you're having that problem, then hey, this is one clear solution. Finally, my favorite note for this deck is if you've locked down a lane and you're trying to win another, Devil Dino plus a stone does an absolutely ridiculously good job of winning that second lane. So don't be afraid to try that out. This deck is sweet. You know I'm a big Thanos fan. This is 6th or 7th Thanos deck I've shared in the last 2 weeks. I'm telling you, welcome back to the top of the meta Thanos. It was a nice diversion while High Evolutionary was a better card. I've maintained overall that I think Thanos will always rise to the top again once things get settled, because there are so many different shells with which Thanos can find massive power. This is one right now. Is this the single best version of Thanos? I think that fundamentally, depending on the meta and the matchups, almost every like control-ish shell of Thanos can be the best. This is a phenomenal version, and W is an unbelievable player. That's part of the reason he's coming on the show. So hopefully you'll check that out over on the Marvel Snap Zone YouTube. It'll probably be out Wednesday, I'd assume, Wednesday at about 11 EST. Maybe a little sooner or later, we'll see. But you got to check it out. He's a phenomenal player. I think that the deck gets you there, but the play takes you over the top. And congrats to Los, congrats to W. He got there. All right, that's what we've got today for this Snap Take. We'll see you tomorrow morning for 2 more Marvel Snap decks. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you. Hit that sub button. Peace.